Thank you.
So let us all know that we are attuned to the vibration, to the life of God that we celebrate through each and every one of us. And thank you for that attunement. So it is.
So it is.
Anyway, today the title I chose for discussion is The Fact of God. The Fact of God. But before we get into that, and the way I see our doing that, there's 4 parts of this discussion. That somebody will read one part, and then we will discuss it. Then we'll move on to the next session. But before we do, what I'd like to say is, one of the things that impressed me the most in my spiritual journey was a little teacher, little in stature, but big in spirituality, Emma Curtis Hopkins. And she was the teacher that influenced a lot of the New Thought movement that took place in the early 1900s. And one of the things that I got, she had 12 booklets, and I, at one time, had the original of all those 12 booklets. I'm sorry, I don't have them anymore. But one of the most things that impressed me out of her teaching was she said this: having a belief is like being tied to a stake. Having a belief is being tied to a stake. Well, certainly we all have beliefs, and we all have and still are tied to some stakes. And some of the false beliefs that we grew up with we've outgrown. And I've asked Bobby this morning, as a child, what were some of the things she taught that she outgrew? Move your chair in there if you wouldn't, so I can hear you better.
Yeah, and I was thinking about some of the early things I was taught, not necessarily from my parents, but just extended family. And so if you know them, join in with me. Children should be seen. You know the
Not
rest of
heard.
it?
And not heard.
And not
Not
heard.
heard.
Not heard. Yep.
Yep, live well enough.
Alone.
Alone.
Let sleeping dogs.
Lie.
So always are cautionary tales about don't initiate. Don't start something in your life. It's I think children were admonished to, again, be in the background. But this is the days of the little man syndrome, where children were early on assumed to be miniature adults. And people didn't really understand that it was a process of brain development in those days. They didn't quite make that bridge connection. So it's called the little man theory. And we assumed that children were just little adults and could pretty well reason the way we reason. It took a long time for us to realize that that's not necessarily true. It's a function of brain development. That interesting concept. Is there anything else you want me to say?
Well, I think that sets the stage for belief systems. You know, some of the beliefs I grew up with from a religious point of view were, you know, you don't eat meat on Friday or you'll be sinning, you know, that type of thing. Or to receive God, you have to fast from midnight and then receive a holy wafer, and then you welcome God into your life. Now, all these beliefs that we're talking about are fundamentally thought harmless, right? But it's interesting to me that when, you know, Bobby learned not to speak until you're spoken to, and she broke those belief systems by becoming an international speaker. So what I'm saying is the beliefs that we've accepted or grew up with can hinder our life. And some
I think also, if you look at the word belief, Belief, in the middle of the word belief is the word lie. And I think we always have to be careful that we seem to feel that often that our beliefs are facts. And I think we always have to pause and say, could there be a lie in my belief system? Do indeed children need to be quiet and not initiate, not speak first? So it's really how to challenge some of those early beliefs that we had that may or may not be factual.
And one of the songs I loved from Frank Sinatra was "Do It My Way."
I did it my way.
I did it my way. And I was going to have that played at my memorial service. But I love it. I love the way he put it out there, and he did it his way. And certainly all of us have to find that within us to do it our way, not the way others have told us to do it. So we need to find our way through the system of life and find the freedom. And one of those freedoms is giving up false beliefs. So the reason I brought this subject up is because also early in the 1900s, people like Madame Blavatsky, who reinstituted the idea of spiritual beings, like angels and stuff, or communications with ascended masters. And then in came people like Alice Bailey, who started channeling information from what's called the Tibetan, which is a beautiful teacher. And out of that sprung a lot of good works that transcended or transformed some of my former beliefs and allowed me to grow spiritually. So this is pretty much the facts of God, which Nikki, if you'll put that up in a chat or something so it can be read.
Yeah.
And we'll have somebody read the first one. This pretty much came out of the Lucas Trust information that was, I guess you'd say, channeled by Alice Bailey and later put into practice by some world famous psychiatrists and stuff. And it worked out wonderfully. So the first fact is all spiritually aware people recognize God transcendent and God immanent. So Shri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, having pervaded this whole universe with a fragment of myself, I remain. God, greater than the created whole, yet God is present also in the part. God transcendent guarantees the plan for our world and is the purpose, conditioning all lives from the minutest atom up through all the kingdoms of nature and man. Who would like to read the next section, part 2?
I'll read it if you like.
Thank
Man's relationship to God, the second truth to which all give allegiance, no matter what faith, is that a man's essential relationship to God, inherent in the human consciousness, in short, I don't know that word. Often and defined and undefined is a sense of divinity. We are all God's children of God. Galatians 3:26. One is our Father, even God, says the Christ. And so all the world teachers and avatars down the ages. As he is, so are we in this world. John 4:17 is another biblical statement. Closer is he than breathing. Nearing the hands and feet, chants the Hindu. Christ in us, the hope of glory, is the triumphant affirmation of St. Paul. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he reap. Galatians 6:7. In a truth which is re-emphasizing. In these words, St. Paul phrases for us the ancient and true teaching of the law of cause and effect, called in the Orient the law of karma.
So let's stop there. We just covered 2 sections, one about God transcendent and God immanent, and then how God is described in different scriptures being omnipresent, etc. Is there any discussion that I can have around these statements? Questions?
Yeah, I just want to chime in there that it's always challenging for me to take in such gendered wording when it comes to spirituality. And I know it's very traditional, but there was every part of me while all of that last section was being read that wanted to just do it all, like with female pronouns and then with like gender neutral pronouns, to just like get it in the recording that like it's all part of it. And yeah, that's just the thing I wanted to chime in at that moment.
That's a very good observation. And it's the one that was made, 100 years ago, and 50 years ago, and 10 years ago, and 5 years ago, and it's still relevant because the words we use at that time need to be adjusted, for our present understanding. And so there again, our belief systems can get in the way of getting the deeper message sometimes because we get stuck in, well, it needs to be said a different way, or it's slighting females, or because it's male dominated, that type of thing.
Well, it is actually slighting females because it's male dominated, because all of these words were given to us by humans that were implicit in the gender bias that was the societal norm at that time. And that's what's recorded and given down to us. So it's still there.
Yeah. But it is, when you look past that, does it speak truth to you? Is God transcendent? Is God immanent for you?
Yes, when I look past the gendering, I do take in the other message, but I think the piece of me that gets stuck on the gendering is still like seeing how much it's really present in our society, on our everyday.
Yeah. And that's just one example of many, because as you know, our language is dualistic. And there's always room to say, pick one side or the other in our language because of its dualistic nature. So our words are endeavoring to point to something. Anyways, our feeble attempt to understand what the presence of God is in our life, and what it means for each and every one of us. So even these things that we're reading and maybe accepting into our belief system right now may well change in the next 50 years, 100 years. There may be another form of enlightenment that wakes us up to a further, deeper understanding.
So I did a little experiment
You did.
and I rewrote this thing with AI. Let me share it with you.
Oh, you are a clever little rascal. Wow.
It's important. So here's part 1 in chat. And then I'll show you part 2 as well. See if that sits better.
So I've done the same thing. I've taken some of these old teachings and
Yeah.
affirmations, and what I've done is I've put them into more modern, acceptable language that suits me and be more soothing to the ear, our lifetime right now.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for now that's a marvelous thing, that AI. I mean, you're Mark, that's a form of genius, right? Now, just imagine you couldn't have done that 2 years ago, right? So the fact that,
well, we could have read it like that just from our own human mouths really quickly, but the getting it in print so quickly is the AI miracle for sure.
it's spontaneous and it's wonderful. And it just shows the creative process. And to get to that creative process, you often have to let go of the old way of an old way and find a new way.
Yeah.
It's the beauty of it all. Well, thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. So let's move on to the next section.
Wait, Charlie, I had a quick question. I understand, God transcendent, but what do they mean about God immanent? That he's always here now and ready to be with us, or what's your definition of that? It's Corinne. Thank you.
Yeah, Corinne, thank you for your question. I didn't see you in the scrolling down here of people. Are you?
Yeah, I'm here. I've got my camera isn't working, so I didn't have I have the video off.
Okay,
but I'm
So-
here.
so you're like the Holy Spirit. You can't be seen, but you can be heard.
Yeah, exactly. And I am, yeah, exactly. I am they.
So God immanent, what does that mean? People have a hard time of really getting that God, that we are God, that we are parts of God, that we can never be separated from God.
Okay, so that's what you mean by that. Okay, then I got it now. I got it now.
Yeah, and some people would say ultimately the only sin is a sense of separation from God.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome. Okay, number 3, who would like to read that? Who would step up to read that? The fact of immortality.
I will. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Charlie. The fact of immortality and of eternal persistence. The spirit in man is undying. It forever endures, progressing from point to point and stage to stage upon the path of evolution, unfolding steadily and sequentially the divine attributes and aspects. This truth involves necessarily the recognition of 2 great natural laws, the law of rebirth and the law of cause and effect. The churches have emphasized and exploited the extraterritoriality, of deity and have posted the presence of a God who is creating, sustaining, and creatively active, but at the same time outside his, her, their creation, an inscrutable onlooker. This type of transcendent creator must be shown to be false, and this doctrine must be countered by the manifestation of God in woman, man, people, the hope of glory.
Okay, that's in that section. Anyone like to discuss any parts of that one? You know,
The exploitation and emphasis of the churches have been territorial, and to me that is indicative of what humans have done to the whole sense of what spirituality is all about, is they've molded it to fit into their hierarchy and their patriarchy, and from that you lose some of the meaning of what this is all about, this energetic being where we exist.
I think that is dead on, because presently what we're seeing when it's weaponized, what we're seeing is presently where we're reducing God to a gender, male and female, and the anti-trans movement is all, saying, well, we're creating God's image and it has to be man or woman. They almost forget about the spiritual aspect of God and reality and all this, and they kind of reduce it to a humanistic form to simplify their message, which is corrupt in its genesis.
And
So
also, Kevin, they forget that people aren't just men or women. 2%
Yeah.
of the population are redheads and 2% of the population are intersexed, which means they're not just male or female. Just
this,
had to interject that.
yeah, they're forgetting about the diversity. And they weaponize the deity to claim it's very specific and borderline. Whereas, it's endless. It's spiritually endless. But to give the authorities power, they have reduced it to hard beliefs that may not always be based in spiritual motives.
Yeah, so I think the key is that the bolded statement, the last line of paragraph 1, this truth involves necessarily the recognition of 2 great natural laws, the law of rebirth and the law of cause and effect. That has nothing to do with gender. It has everything to do with life. And I think that's what this is all about.
Yeah, well put. Thank you.
Well, I just wanted to say, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Kevin. Are you done? I apologize.
Oh, I'm finished, yes.
Okay, thank you. But when I'm reading this too, like how I tried to read it, his, her, they, is and I think I saw it in a book years ago, but I don't remember the name of the book. It was a kid's book I read to my son, but it was all about God, like why, it's like we put what everyone's saying, like a gender on him, mainly male, female, they, whatever. Why can't everybody just change it and say, but at the same time, outside God's creation, just have it God, because it's like we all know it's more of a, or my feeling, it's more of a spirit presence. You know what I mean? It's not like it's in human form. And the same thing with, it says, at the very end, it says manifestation God in people. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if anybody understands what I'm trying to say, but I'm just saying it would be nice if it was just, just God's name and then, neutral people. That's all of us collectively.
No, I agree. And I think, even changing God to either source or creator is a little bit
Yeah, it's better.
easier
Yeah,
on
exactly.
the ears. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Okay.
mankind, that's all old school. So
Yeah.
humankind
Okay.
or what have you.
We probably beat this up enough, right?
We did a good job.
Yeah, before we move on, Nikki, yeah, well, you could say God is genderless, but you could say that God created, feminine energy and male type energy, and that's one way of defining energy, and that to be a whole human being in experience, we need to find a balance in the feminine and masculine aspects of ourselves. And part of the growth, I think, for me in the Madonna ministry is the recognition of the divine feminine is the intuitive nature of ourselves. And I need to get more in touch with that. That the masculine energy is important too, but if it dominates and doesn't find balance, then we create separation. So for me, one of the goals is to find that balance within myself, that creative source that allows the intuition to work and help, and then the other side that will use the intellect and the power to create something. It's all wonderful. It's just a matter of how we use it.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's go on to who wants to read the next one here. This is a longer one. The continuity of revelation and the divine approaches.
I can read it.
Thank you.
A fourth essential truth, and one which clarifies all the planned work of the Christ, is tied in with spiritual revelation and the need for humans, for the divine, and of the divine for humans. Never has deity itself at any time without witness, never has human demanded light that the light has not been forthcoming. Those who come as the revealers of the love of the divine come from that spiritual center to which the Christ gave the name, the kingdom of the divine. Here dwell the spirits of just humans made perfect. Here the spiritual guides of the race are to be found, and here the spiritual executive of the divine's plan live and work and oversee human and planetary affairs. It is called by many names by many people. All the world's scriptures bear witness to the existence of this center of spiritual energy. This spiritual hierarchy has been steadily drawing nearer to humanity as humans have become more conscious of divinity and more fitted for contact with the divine. For some years now, the spiritual hierarchy of our planet has been drawing nearer to humanity, and its approach is responsible for the great concepts of freedom, which are so close to the hearts of humans everywhere. The dream of fraternity and sisterhood, of fellowship, of world cooperation, and of peace based on right human relations is becoming clearer in our minds. We are also visioning a new and vital world religion, a universal faith, which will have its roots in the past, but which will make clear the new dawning beauty and coming vital revelation. Humankind invokes divine approach in various ways. By means of the Inshahote, is that, I don't know how to say that either. By
Yeah.
means, what is it?
It's an Indian word. Escapes definition escapes me right now.
What's the pronunciation correct though?
Inchoate, I think.
Okay. By means of the inchoate, voiceless appeal or invocative cry of the masses, and also by the planned, defined invocation of the spiritually oriented aspirants, the intelligently convinced worker, discipline, and initiate, by all, in fact, who form the new group of world servers. The science of invocation and evocation will take the place of what we now call prayer and worship. Be not disturbed by the use of the word science. It is not the cold and heartless intellectual thing so oft depicted. It is in reality the intelligent organization of spiritual energy and of the forces of love. And these, when effective, will evoke the response of spiritual beings who can, again, walk openly among humans, and thus establish a close relationship and a constant communication between humanity and the spiritual hierarchy. This new invocation work will be the keynote of the coming world religion and will fall into two parts. There will be the invocative work of the masses of the people everywhere, trained by the spiritually minded people of the world, working in the churches whenever possible under an enlightened clergy, to accept the fact of the approaching spiritual energies focused through Christ and his spiritual hierarchy, and trained also to voice their demand for light, liberation, and understanding, and all of the other spiritual enlightened masters that have come before. There will also be the skilled work of invocation as practiced by those who have trained their minds through right meditation, who know the potency of formulas, mantras, and invocations, and who work consciously. They will increasingly use certain great formulas of words, which will later be given to the race, just as the Lord's Prayer was given by Christ, and as the new invocation has been given out for use at this time by the hierarchy. Church people need to remember that the human spirit is greater than all the churches and greater than their teaching. In the long run, the human spirit will defeat them and proceed triumphantly into the kingdom of the divine, leaving them far behind unless they enter as a humble part of the mass of humans. Nothing under heaven can arrest the progress of the human soul on its long pilgrimage from darkness to light, from the unreal to the real, from death to immortality, and from ignorance to wisdom. If the great organized religious groups of churches in every land and composing all faiths do not offer spiritual guidance and help, humanity will find another way. Nothing can keep the spirit of humans from the divine. Religion is the name given to the invocative appeal of humanity and the evocative response of the greater life to that cry. All the information comes from the book below, from the Lucas Trust.
Thank you.
P.S. All right, nice.
That's fine. Thank you very much. You did a beautiful job on the reading. And you found the humor in when you're reading something about Trinity. You remember what that was?
I think I was actually laughing at myself tripping over trying to gender neutralize the whole thing clumsily. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a great example because if we need to laugh at ourselves because we all trip over something, right? we believe in something that needs to be fixed or changed, or we get stuck and we miss the spirit of the message sometimes. But thank you, Dee. That was a wonderful reading. It's a lot to grasp, I think, or to understand. Are there any questions about it?
I don't have a question, but I have a quick comment. There's this piece back here where it said something about people had to come into it through humbleness and like acceptance or something. And like one of my core beliefs is that no matter what people call it, this divine universal life spark energy does come into people's lives, and they don't have to call it anything in particular. They don't have to, you know, call it Christianity. They don't have to call it, you know, any particular even religious type of something. Like the spirit will come into their lives and they will have it move them. So I don't know, that just kind of, the wording kind of stuck.
So I've got a question for you. What does it mean when the spirit comes into your life?
Oh, I think I like to think of it as part of the spark of inspiration and part of this spark for motivation. I think it's something that kind of lifts us up and gives us energy to actually move into what we're working on, working with, dealing with.
So it provokes our, awakens us to maybe create something or inspires us to do something. I get that. But
Absolutely.
because life is dualistic, our conversation dualistic, is that spark has to be within us. And, you know, it does, something inspires us, but the life, the spirit we're talking about, whatever it's called, is us. We don't want to separate ourselves from it. So there's a tendency to say, well, now I'm spiritually alive before I was spiritually dead. Well, I don't think anyone's ever spiritually dead at all. I think we're our memories or our awareness is blocked from our appreciation of the depth of the godlike within us. And when you use the word humility, and when I was doing what's called today Reiki some years ago, what I discovered when I reached the full depth of humility, where I totally able to let go of that, you know, kind of be more like one with the source. There's no pride in that. There's no disappointment. There is a tremendous sense of peace, tremendous sense of joy. And what comes out of that is miraculous. You know, to me, it's kind of the awakening, like the guy that created the song that we all love and hear, or most of us do anyway. He was a slave ship owner or captain, remember? And he went through a transformation experience, and he wrote Amazing Grace. And he saw himself as a wretch, but by wretch he meant he was clouded, and his belief system kept him from the humility of this true spirit in him that recognizes that life in all creation, including slaves, including ship captains, including men and women, including trees, including animals, It's everywhere present. So that's that moment of what you call inspiration, to me, comes out of the deeper sense of humility, that there's something greater than we are that we're one with, and we wake up to that oneness. And it's a sense of awe. It's a sense of wow. It's a beautiful moment, a transcendent moment that once in a while we get to experience.
Absolutely. And I want to add on to that, like you, at the beginning of what you were saying, you were talking about how we're never really truly separated. But I think there's so many people these days that feel separated. And I agree that we never really truly are, but there's so much that's hard for people to deal with. And it seems like a lot of people tune out to a certain extent, and that's when things become pretty hard. And so when we can help support ourselves and each other tune back into that connection that you're talking about, Charlie, amazing things can happen.
Yeah, and maybe the ultimate surrender is surrendering our bodies to be reincarnated into something else. I mean, the grieving process, Bob and I have lived with these bodies for a long time, and we grieve the loss of being able to do such and such things that we're used to be able to do. But ultimately, we're going to have to let go of the whole body, right? And so then that's the transformation takes place, and the body moves on, the spirit moves on. And it's fascinating that in the material world, nothing ever, just changes. It's never lost. It's never lost. And in the spirit world, it's never lost. It's always there. And so as we identify with that eternal aspects of ourselves, through whatever evokes us, whatever provokes us, whatever moves us into that greater understanding that's beyond ordinary understanding, that allows us to experience that transcendence while in the human form. It's marvelous. And I think when they talk about prayers of invocation, evocation, to me, that's very important. Because when you're opening a meeting, for instance, like this, we do a prayer of invocation, that means we're honoring the presence of God within us and within all creation. We're acknowledging it as our belief system, as our understanding. And that in itself sets the tone for whatever we're about. So that's prayer of invocation. And evocation simply means, kind of in another way, we found our vocation. Our vocation is to live the life of God. And we need to find that God in its purity within ourselves. And out of that comes the creation of beautiful, wonderful happenings.
I want to chime in one more time. There's something that what you just said brought up for me, and also what we read earlier. They talked about science in this reading earlier,
Right.
and how it's not really separate, and don't be afraid of it. And like everything physical is made of energy, and everything spiritual is also made of energy. There is that thing where they weigh someone when they're at the brink of death, and when they pass, there's like 21 grams missing. Like their soul has weight to it. And I think if we remember that everything is energy, spiritual and physical, it helps us to connect it all.
Yeah, I agree. And I love it when the musicians play soul music, right? Because reaching down to the depth of their spirituality and bringing out the tonality of beautiful sounds. Somebody raised their hand. Laura.
When I was, after my second divorce, I found myself very separated from any type of religion. I couldn't even say the word God. I was so upset with the way my life was going, and I thought I was being punished. And so I found the rooms of Al-Anon, and that's where I renewed my faith in a higher power. I choose to call my higher power. And it took me a long time because people in the rooms would say, and you know, the song Amazing Grace is real big in 12-step programs because that's how we all felt. It was like our story. And we were a wretch until we found a higher power. And I have such a great respect for the 12 steps, because had I not found them, I'm not sure where I would be, or if I would be at all. And when they said, well, you have to believe in something, so try believing in a rainbow or clouds or trees or anything. Just put your belief in something. And that really helped me to finally find my spiritual path again.
Yeah, thank you. And now we're back to the word belief, right? So you were able to change your belief.
Right.
Yeah, that you could move beyond where you were. Now, be talking about, you know, genders and all that stuff. The New Thought movement took the song Amazing Grace, and they didn't want to use the word wretch because that's an affirming that I am a wretch. And I think that carries it too far, because we were a wretch. We were divided from our source and our imagination. So I think that wretch is a good use of the word, or in Al-Anon and all that, where they say, you know, I have a disease. Well, in a sense, that's true. They do, from a humanistic point of view, can't drink alcohol. They should stay away from it. But the word disease is really it means you're out of ease. You're not living your full potential. It's not something that you can't change. So oftentimes we label things diseases, that they come out of our experience of being anxious, fearful, out of ease, and then we become vulnerable. And so our bodies then become part of our greatest teachers. You know, what's going on in our mental, emotional lives that need to change. That's part of the healing process. Well, anyway, thank you all for participating. And
Karine, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I did have a quick comment. I just wanted to say what Befriend had said about, you know, like your soul leaves, and I had that wonderful experience to see my dad transition, and it's just, I'm not tooting my own horn, but I've spiritually grown, especially during COVID and all that, and it's amazing when you're watching someone who's passing away, and you're seeing, you know, this transition, and you know, and then finally they, you know, no more breathing. And I thought it was so beautiful. I mean, yes, he was breathing slightly, like not gasping, but you could see his body, you know, trying to get more air at the end of the air. And I actually saw in my mind's eye, like this beautiful whirlwind of energies just going up, you know, just going up with ancestors I didn't even know. I mean, some of them I recognized, and I thought it was so beautiful. And then I'm like telling everyone in the room, wasn't that beautiful? And they're all looking at me like, what? You know, because I could just feel his spirit leaving, and like he's on to the next energy. And exactly what Befriend said. I've read that too, where there's that little minuscule amount that knows. And I just was so happy that I was there. And again, this is still raw on me because he just died a few months ago. But again, I just wanted to share that. I'm glad you brought that up, Befriend, because I needed to hear that today. So I'm complete. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. B, I'm a little concerned about you. I see that picture behind you of the Queen of Hearts. And I'm wondering if you're playing with a full deck. You're muted. You're muted.
There's a funny story about that. I had to move out of my house and then move back in because I had a roommate that was living here that started threatening me. So to get him out, I had to move out and then move back in. So when I was moving back in, I was like, I need things to feel different. So I was at a thrift store and I saw this piece of art and I was like, am I that person that could look at this every day? And I was like, yes, I am that weird person. I'm getting this. It was $10. And I walked out with it.
Great.
So what does the Queen of Hearts mean to you? What does it
You know
mean?
what it meant to me when I bought it was a nod to family, just like these tattoos do, because we would always play cards at the holidays and family gatherings when we got together. And so that it's the hearts and the Queen of Hearts kind of felt like it was like representing me and my love with family and just being in community and connecting with people. So yeah.
So then it's like an invocation that invites your awareness back to that time of
Yeah.
yes, celebration. You know,
Yeah.
I wanted to say, I wanted to say to Corrine, that's why I do the hospice work, because I have witnessed so many people leaving their bodies, and I see that as a gift.
Thank you. I thought it was the best gift ever. It helped so much with closure. There were a couple, well, one family member that was in Europe, and we had told 7 days before, hey, you better come home. We know he's going to pass on based on the doctors. And we're like, oh, I finished my trip to Europe. And then they came home. And I think that, you know, it was hard on them because they're still having a harder process than me, because I actually got to see this beautiful event, you know, and I've been praying for that person and working with them, but it's like, you know, they've even admitted, well, that was my decision. But it's like you said, I found it so beautiful. I really, you know, it was beautiful. So I'm glad I was there. So thanks for saying that, Laura.
And I'd like to add too that as a nurse, I was usually there when one of my patients would die. They knew I wasn't afraid and they would wait for me. And in this one case, I literally saw the angel of death pick up her spirit and fly out the window, and the window slammed shut. And it was the most beautiful experience I have ever had.
Wow, that's
Because I used to be able to feel it, but I actually saw him pick her spirit up and separate it from her body the minute she left. And it was such a blessing. So you were truly blessed to be able to see what you saw. And your
Thank
father
you.
gave you that. Your father
Thank-
gave you that.
Thank you
And
so much.
Kareen, I want to add that you have done your work on yourself to be able to see that. And that is the gift that you get for doing your own internal work and clearing yourself of things that are blocking you from seeing those connections and that divine energy.
Yeah. And what's crazy is that, well, it's not crazy, but now that he's passed on, my dad was awesome, but he was very analytical, very, you know, what are you doing about this? What are you doing about that? What are you doing about this? And it's kind of funny because, you know, I actually have, which I've told people before, that I've seen him, you know, around the house and smelled certain smells that are with him. And it's funny because I'm getting all this stuff done since he's passed away. I think he's like saying, okay, you need to work on this. You need to work on that. I can hear him. My son's even had the same. He's had a couple dreams about him where my dad has sat him down. They're talking in a dream and he goes, now, whatever you do, You know, you got to save the money. Don't be spending on frivolous things, you know? And that was totally you. Oh, yeah, because my son has seen people since he was real little passed on. So both of us have been blessed with that. But everyone has that gift. So thank you for sharing that, both of you ladies. Thank you. That means a lot.
And
So
Charlie,
what's the discussion for next week? Laura, yeah, I don't want to, I want to hear what you have to say, Laura, but I want to also put some out there about next week.
Oh, and also our time is up.
Yeah, our time is running out. Literally.
Literally.
Go ahead, Laura, please.
well, I was just gonna say, one of my, you were talking about Amazing Grace. One of my hospice clients had no family or anything, and that one of the hospice nurse asked me if I would sit with him until he passed, because she had to leave, and she didn't want to leave him alone because he had no one. So I went, and before she left, she said, and his favorite song is Amazing Grace. And so after she left, I looked around to make sure nobody was around, and I held his hand and I sang Amazing Grace. I sang it once, I hummed it a second time, I sang it a third time, and when I finished the song, he was gone.
How wonderful.
That's beautiful.
And one of my medium friends told me later on that same night that he came to her and told her to contact me and tell me thank you.
Yeah, and can you imagine if you didn't move through your fear of being seen by singing?
Right.
That wouldn't have happened.
Mhm.
It's so beautiful. I love that story. It just brought me to tears, literally. And it's just you following the
too.
calling. It's
Me
so
too.
beautiful.
Yeah, Laura, that was beautiful. Thank you. Brought me to
Thank
tears
you.
too.
Me too.
Yeah.
We don't
Dolly.
die accidentally. Everything, when at the moment of our passing, everything that is in place is in place. The relative who did not fly home, he was not supposed to be home. You mentioned your father was very matter of fact. Well, how do you think he treated the airfare? Laura, you were there when that man passed over, and you were actually sending him on the most epic journey of his soul's life. And I heard it described about a month ago, and your soul embarks on the most incredible journey that it's ever been on. And we are souls having a human experience, and our soul returns. And we don't die accidentally. We can't stop death, we can't delay it. But everybody is in place where they are supposed to be. And we should never have regrets because we weren't there to say goodbye. The deceased knows our hearts at the moment they pass. And they understand why you're not there. Maybe you couldn't, maybe your father didn't want to have to see them. We don't know. So we should
does
never
happen.
second guess.
Yeah, and that's what, Kevin, that's why I've been helping her with her, that she was in the right place, just so you know. Yeah, so thank you for that reminder. Yeah, I've been telling her that, and it's exactly what you said. I've had that, my son knew, Mom, I'm just gonna it was too much for him. I said, and he goes, yeah, I know it's the best for him and for me. So yeah, so that's beautiful, Kevin. Thanks for that reminder.
Sorry,
And I believe that some
didn't mean to
people wait.
hijack.
No,
Some
you
people
did
wait-
not. I probably hijacked. Sorry.
Some people wait until everyone leaves the room before they let go because they don't want them to witness that.
I
They
was just
can't
gonna
say
share that my
goodbye.
dad, he waited until my mom left the room
Yeah.
to go, and he didn't want any of us kids there. And it's like 2 years now, this month, from when he passed. Yeah.
It's true.
The soul leaves when it's time to leave. We got to remember that, you know. A different doctor wouldn't have changed the moment of death. It may have prolonged it, but it should not, like we always say, oh, we should have gone to a different hospital and had different tests. No,
Doesn't matter.
no. God,
Matter.
your soul returned at the exact moment it was supposed to. You know, we can't have regrets around death. We can the deceased knows our heart, and they know our heart from day one. So
Beautiful.
don't feel guilty, or try not to.
The humanistic point of view is this is the final curtain, nothing else. Frank's not for some, right? And this final curtain, well, hell, it's just a transition to another experience.
You know, when I die and they off, you can bet I'm gonna be on a glorious trip.
Hallelujah, brother.
All right.
Praise be to
Any-
God.
Any volunteers for next week? Who has a burning desire?
Wish we could talk Bobby into something. She's so good at this psychological approach to life. She's helped a lot of people. So maybe we'll have an open forum. You can ask Bobby a lot of questions about whatever you want.
Things you've always wanted to ask a psychiatrist, but never did.
Yeah,
Sounds good to me.
I'm perfectly willing to feel anything you want to bring up.
oh, that'd be a good title, wouldn't it?
Say that again?
Whatever you want to ask of a psychiatrist or afraid to,
Okay.
online and get your answers.
Are
Sounds
we
good.
being tested?
What'd you say?
Are we being tested
Oh,
to see if we're
absolutely.
sane or
There
not?
will be a test. There will be a test at the end.
Yeah,
Bring it
All
on.
right. Very good. Thank you, everybody. Wonderful
Yeah,
discussion.
thanks.
Have a
It was
blessed
good to
week.
see you all again.
Yeah.
Oh, pray for Sally and Shirley. Shirley's got a UTI. Sally's got COVID again.
Oh, boy.
Oh,
Mm.
no.
all right.
Send them
All right.
prayers.
Mm.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful week.
Bye.
Love you.
Bye.
Peace.